I'm going to show you how to receive your peer review feedback, and more importantly, the two things you need to do with it. One is to react. The second one is the most important, and that's to think about what you're doing, what you've received, so that you can then figure out how to improve your initial project, make it much better before you submit it by the end of this week, by the deadline. Now let's go look at your project. You submitted it under submission, you did peer review under review, and now it's time to go to React. What's going on in React? First thing is you do have this pop-up menu here. This is how you can switch from one peer review to the next. You will have three. You'll get the green check mark once you've submitted your reaction. Now the goal is not to submit your reaction. It is an important step, but the goal of this final stage of the process is actually to focus on the feedback you have received, to make sense of it, and to then make the decisions about what you are going to do with the feedback in order to improve your initial project and submit a revised and improved version by the end of this week, by the deadline. Now, you may not have 3 reviews. If that's the case, this simply means that one or more of your colleagues did not failed to honor their commitment to his or her peers. And what this means is you will have to make do with what you have. Now, you may receive at some point a late review and go from 1 to 2 or from 2 to 3. That's great. So keep an eye on those on this little menu. But even if you only receive one feedback, you should use that one. And now let me show you how. So on the left-hand side, start there. This is the actual feedback. And so here, take the time to read. You have the rubric in case you need a refresher on what it is you're supposed to be analyzing, what you're supposed to have in your project. And then here you can see the reviewer's rating. This is not a grade. You're not giving each other grades. That's not the point. It's an indicator. What matters much more is the additional comment. And here you can see this author, or this reviewer, thought that the summary included all the important points. Great. Even if you get someone saying, excellent summary, you should still ask yourself, is that true? Was this reviewer just in a hurry? Whatever you get, if you do think that this comment, this feedback is useful, you can click on like. If you want to send some feedback to the reviewer, feedback on feedback, if you will, you can click on comment. But the important part is not to spend too much time discussing with your reviewers. What you want to focus on is actually to take the time to read the feedback, soak it up, think about it, make sense of it. What does it mean for you in terms of your goal this week, which is to improve your project? So having the feedback is really a tool, an instrument for you to then figure out, make decisions, what within the time that you have. And the time is limited, so do not be overly ambitious. Take the feedback, make sense of it, and then decide, I'm going to change these 3 things or these 5 things about my project to make it much better before I submit the final version. So that's what this thinking process here is about. You do it with each reviewer's feedback, take notes, you figure out what changes you're going to make. That is what it's about. It's not about getting into an argument with your reviewers or making judgments about whether the reviews are good or not, or useful or not. Nevertheless, on the right-hand side, you do have an opportunity to share feedback with your reviewers. Why? We all stand to benefit from this type of peer review process, but it's not easy. You don't know how you're doing unless you get feedback from the people whose works you reviewed. So this is your opportunity to do that. It is not the main point this week, but it is something that is part of the exercise that you need to do. And it will help you also clarify if you're sort of offended by the feedback you received. It'll help you make sense, like, what's wrong with this feedback? If you appreciated the feedback, we very much encourage you to do that as well. And so, for example, here, this author had no issues, apparently, with the feedback received from this reviewer. Thank you for your time for reviewing my project. Suggestions like trend of coverage over years and including present data will make it effective. So that's great to see. This feedback on feedback is a very useful process. It is not the main point this week. Now, where it's going to be of interest is to your own thinking process as you decide what changes you are going to make to your project is you can find yourself in a situation where one reviewer will completely contradict another reviewer. So for example, I don't know, on the author's cover note, one reviewer here has found it excellent. Another reviewer may say, this requires major improvements. So two things matter here. One is try to figure out why and how they could give such different answers to the same question and to the same work. That will give you insight into what you actually need to improve, what stands to benefit from improvement. Maybe one reviewer missed it. You can also take the position that this reviewer was in a hurry, did not read your project properly, did not take the time, or confused it with another project they were reviewing. Who knows? And this leads to the second point, which is that ultimately this project is yours. You own it. You are responsible for it. And so it is your judgment, your capacity for discernment, for adjudication between the feedbacks that you receive. They may be telling you different things. You have to make sense of them. And ultimately, you have to make the decisions on how to improve your project. Now, that doesn't mean you can just say, well, these reviewers don't know what they're talking about, I'll just ignore their feedback. No, chances are that anyone willing to make the effort to get this far in this exercise will have taken due care, due diligence to give you the best feedback that they can. And there's probably, very likely, something that you can use to improve your project. Remember, that is what it is all about. So don't spend too much time here. You need to spend time to read through the feedback on the left-hand side. You'll need to do it 3 times if you receive 3 projects. If you receive less than 3 peer reviews, make do with what you have. Do, at some point, finish the reactions here and then submit them. Let me see if I can show you. Yes, so under reviewer 3, you'll see, don't forget, you need the comments here. You can see, you can insert an additional comment, and then you have a question 2 optional for additional comments. And then you need to click the green button, submit feedback reaction, each time for each of the reviewers. If you don't do that, you won't be able to finish the exercise, and your reviewers will be left hanging. Was my feedback useful? How did you use it? So this is where you can actually have a dialogue with feedback on feedback. But again, the main point is you want to use all this together with everything else that you learned from the exercise and to figure out, to make decisions. How am I going to improve the project that I submitted 2 weeks ago? Make it better, improve it, so it is more useful for me, more compelling, more credible, more complete, better than it was before, to submit that proudly as the final version of my project. That's what you're doing this week. That's the overarching aim. The feedback and the feedback on feedback is to help you, progress to that process so you can proudly submit something by the end of this week.